Hello everybody, it's Labrys here, and welcome to the first level of the Silver Story tutorial, Crisis City. This is going to be a section-by-section breakdown of a couple different ways to do each section, ranging in difficulty. I'll cover the most basic one first, and it'll get a little harder and a little harder as we go on. Before watching this video, I highly recommend that you look at the 3 videos that are on general mechanics and basic and advanced movement techniques before you watch this video. Particularly the one on telethrowing. I will gloss over a lot of what you would need to know in order to do the tricks in this stage. And it will only make sense if you have watched that telethrow video and kind of at least a little familiarize yourself with the trick. So if you haven't done that, do that, come back, and we can get started. Alright, so I assume you've done that. To start the level, you want, as the screen fades in, you want to hover. This saves you having to jump over that ledge that's just past the hit ring. But you don't quite have enough gauge to make it to the other side, so you have to break your hover a little bit in order to safely land up here. Alternatively, if you watch the advanced mechanics section, you can, if I can hit it, you can do a levitation extension, and it saves a little bit of time. Now, this rock is your friend, and I'll showcase the ball briefly and the lines you want to take with it, but you can also clear the stage just by jumping on this rock and telethrowing it as well. So when you start lifting this rock, you want to wait for your gauge to recharge fully. That way you have enough juice to get close to the platform in which I'm going. You can hold hover there if you're a little more confident with gauge management. You want to go ideally to the left side of the large structure being covered by the pause menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reposition myself a little bit once I start lifting to the left and then throw straight forward. Like that. So you can get around the stick out part of broken building and make your way to an invisible wall. Forgot about that guy. If you go too far left, however, you run into an invisible wall, which doesn't stop you, but it does stop objects. So, by extension, it stops you. Holding X there can help with gauge management there on that jump off the rock. So if you're really afraid of that invisible wall, you can turn right a little early like I did. Regardless, what you want to do is jump off and hit that dash panel. This dash panel is really fast. I recommend hitting it and jumping off as opposed to telethrowing straight to the trigger, which we will do in the second variation momentarily. So I'll do that one more time. No, some of the levitation extension stuff I'm doing is not entirely required, but you kind of see where to go and where to eventually end up. Now for the faster version of this, you basically get on the first rock and then end the level. That's the too long didn't read version of it. So right by Silver's middle quill is this corner. You want to be standing right on this corner. The way I just got up there is I tap jumped, but I only moved myself while I was falling. And it was just a quick flick. I was up against this rock here. And it's just you move yourself forward ever so slightly. The lower you are on this corner, the better. If you're too high, you're not going to get enough height out of the throw itself to clear the platform that the ball is on. So now that you're in position and you're looking in this general direction, so down the line that is directly to Silver's left, you can kind of see it here. Want to be looking that way. And then there are plenty of things you can run into. You can run into the boxes if you're too far right. If you're too far left, on occasion, you will hit a camera trigger, and that will get you very turned around and possibly run into the lamppost on the left that's just below and to the left of the rock. However, if everything goes well, you should clear it in 1 or maybe 2 telethrows.
The building's knocked over.
Wow, it is knocked over. So I like to do 2 kind of quicker ones like I did before. And then I wait until this structure to the right of the HUD and to the left of the pause menu goes off the left edge of my screen. Then I do a 3rd forward. And then if you see just to the left of the subtitle text, there is a overpass with the bridge that leads to the dash panel. We're not going to be going there, although you can. This method is a little faster because you never dismount the rock. Once it's off screen, you do a 4th one. That was a little early, but then you have to get around this building. The base of this building, that's kind of touching the bottom edge of the screen, extends upwards. So really, there's an invisible wall about at my height that extends all the way outward to the lower edge of the building, not the thinner top part. You'll want to wait until you've cleared the building in its entirety to telethrow again. But before that, you want to tap left. And maybe a little down. I'm very high right now. I have a lot of height, more than usual for my tastes. So I'm going to angle myself a little down as well. You don't really have any danger walking down to the left. You have a little bit of danger moving to the right. But since you positioned yourself towards the left edge of that triangle, you're not going to have any problems if you continue to walk to the left. So don't worry about it. You don't need to pivot unless you're too far right. And then in which case you might, I don't know how you made it over in the first place. But yes, once you pass this, 1 more for the road. And you're in section 2. Now, the place where the loading trigger actually is a little deceptive. It's hard to describe. I'll go back to section 1 to try and show where it is. It extends very far to the right of where it should. Oops. You want to have that in the story. 2. Wait till it's off screen to the left. 3. Wait for the overpass. 4. Now this is about the height I more or less expect. So you want... Oh, it was above it. See, this thing is huge. But it's very common that you will be too low. That's a common mistake that I used to make, is just being too low for this trigger. So right after you throw to the left, you generally want to immediately lift and continue lifting in that direction. Not telethrow, just lift. So I'll show that again. I'm gonna mess up my rhythm a little bit. Sometimes you clear it way too wide, and then when you turn left, this happens. And sometimes, if you're too low, you hit a camera trigger that turns your camera around as if you were hitting the jump panel that usually is intended to take you into this trigger. That's why I opted to tap hover there. And that's section 1 for you. 2 is there are 2 ways to go about this. You can either play as Blaze, which is good if you just want to get out, or you can do Blaze Skip. I will demo both, but Blaze Skip is very fast and saves quite a bit of time over playing Blaze herself. I think it's about 10 to 15 seconds, maybe more, especially if you do it as I'm about to demonstrate. So just to my left, there is a rock outcropping, and to my left, and we don't want to go down the hole. The hole, if you hit it, there's a jump panel at the bottom, and if you hit the jump panel, you cause a bunch of explosions to occur. And they cause lag on console, which is very slow. And also the movement, and the jump panel doesn't move you that fast anyways. So what we're going to do is we're going to run to our left. Big jump, Fireclaw. Okay, so somehow we only hit one of the explosions, but trust me when I say they're exposed to be on both sides everywhere. And it is not fun if you run on console. So don't jump down the hole. So run to the left, big jump, Fireclaw, which is just the next tap. Sometimes that happens if you hit the dash panel a little far to the right. Not a huge deal. You need to double jump to make that gap. So to my left, covered by the HUD and the life count and stuff, that's where you want to end up after this. You can replace this Fireclaw with a double jump. It's just Fireclaw gets you down faster. Now you want to walk past these guys. The reason is you don't want to target anything that you don't want to target. They're not required combat, so you just walk up past them. What is required combat is the worm just after these lizards, after you drop off the ledge. So right here, when you hit the ground, you want to start hold X button and release it when you're about to make contact with the worm that I'm about to make contact with to do a spinning claw. And you can kind of circle about inside the worm to do 3 hits and open the spring in the cage. Like this. So wait till you hit the ground. I'm still holding X. Yeah, and that's very fast instead of just Fireclawing it 3 times. You can always turn your spinning claw off early by pressing X again. Once I hit this last spring, I will hold left. The reason why? Look at how far right you are relative to the dash panel that's supposed to angle you towards the exit of this passageway. It's a little precarious, and sometimes you will just straight up miss this dash panel. Unless you hold left, then you hit it every time. So I'm holding X, using Fire Claw to power through that guy. Now you can do two things. You can either, there's a 1-up right there. You can either Fire Claw the 1-up and then Fire Claw onto the bridge, or just Fire Claw onto the bridge. The 1-up just gets you a very easy time. Fire Claw onto the bridge is barely faster, but it's kind of difficult to avoid the 1-up in the first place. So just for starting out, I'd recommend just hitting the 1-up and then Fire Clawing off it onto the right side of the bridge. We kind of weave between the lizards. Double jump here. And Fire Claw the spring to end the section. So I'm going to do that, but fast. And maybe with a little bit of description. I'm going to walk forward into the blaze trigger. Big jump. Fire Claw. Listen to the tutorial guy and do a double jump. It's a double jump. Off to the left. Fire Claw. I'm walking through these guys. Spin in a circle inside the worm. Hold left. Hold once you hit through the ground and release there. 1-up. Land to the right of the lizards. Double jump. And hit the spring and you're done. This is the easiest way to do the level, but until Telethrow was found, it was also the fastest way to do the level. I'll cover Blaze Skip now, because it's important to know how to do. It's great levitation extension practice, but at the same time, it's pretty risky and is very early into the run. So weigh your options, and if you think you got it, you got it. If you don't, no big deal. You can still get runs out the door because you can always play Blaze. And she's not incredibly slow. So instead of moving forward at all, I will note that the Blaze trigger is pretty wide, but it is also very thin. Like, I don't need to move that far forward, theoretically, in order to pass the Blaze trigger. But I do need to move quite a bit to the right. My cue to turn is my gauge. I want my gauge to be about here before I make a 90-degree turn left. And I am holding the X button to try and regenerate some of this gauge. And then as soon as you move forward a little bit, and I'm going to tap hover just to show it's possible without levitation extensions, you can turn in very sharply and go towards that dash panel. I accidentally did a levitation extension. See, if I can do it on accident, you can do it on purpose. You want to hit the left side of this dash panel, or else the right side will run you into the taxi. Unless you break out of it a little early. And you want to stand about here. What we're going to do is we're going to reposition the rock just a teeny bit to make this skip a lot easier. You will see some top runners do this, what's known as setupless. Saves about a second. If you care, don't move it and just stand very low on the corner. But if you don't care, just pick it up and drop it. You want it to do that. You want it to kind of slightly distance itself from the left side of the overpass. And this is good. So I'm going to line myself up as I did in section 1. And then I'm going to lift, but until I'm over this overpass, I want to maintain this orientation, so I'm not going to bump it into it. So I'm going to neutral stick it first, and then telethrow. So you can stand higher on the edge. You're just going to need to height cap. But you're going to need to hit that invisible ceiling that I mentioned in the basic mechanics video before you start telethrowing. That way, instead of silver just popping off the object, silver kind of slides down to where I am now naturally. It loses a second, but if you can line yourself up on this edge reliably, it's not too big of a deal. So what I do is usually 4. And then right after that 4th one, I want to reposition myself so that I am farther to the right, but I am facing left. Because we're going to take a left turn around this building that I'm just about to pass. So the way I think about it is I walk right and I tap left. Kind of like that. You are holding more right than you are left. Now, the trigger for the end of this section is, the way I like to think of it, is if you go just over that triangular building, just over the right side, you'll just slam into the trigger. And it extends a bit to the right of it as well. So like if you're going just over this side, this is a collision course with the trigger. I'm not going to finish the act or the section because I want to show you this again, but with probably a worse alignment on the initial telethrow. But this will definitely get me to the trigger. It's just past this building. So I'll show the full version with levitation extensions. If you're confident in levitation extensions, you can do what I did there and start falling a little earlier. I'm going to be up here this time. This is kind of a common thing that I do sometimes. But the way you deal with it is you lift until you hit that ceiling and boom, you slide right into the corner. 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to do 5. Because that first one didn't really get you any height, but it did reposition you on the rock. And then you do the walk right, tap left. And hopefully you don't turn too late so that happens. So I'll do it again with tap hovers. Do high, so I'm going to need to do 5. And I always want to move towards this building. If I kept going in a straight line from where I was, I would just whiff the trigger. But the trigger is quite large and in charge. And in either case, whether you're just playing as silver or as blaze, you want to be holding the X button as you enter this trigger. and you'll see why in a second. And then when the screen fades to black, you want to release X. This is going to buffer an X input first possible frame in section 3. Like that. And so what Blaze will do is immediately hit silver. That's awesome. She did a fire claw first possible frame without the game really checking for if you were on the ground or not. And so you save a little bit of time just immediately hitting the silver trigger instead of waiting for her to fall. Because usually you gotta hit the ground first. But it turns out the silver trigger is tall enough to where you really don't. Now, the third section, you want to be about here. So there's kind of a bend in the rock where silver's head ends between this polygon and this polygon. You can see that silver is kind of snapping polygon to polygon. You want to be on the vertical one, but you want to be on the upper left corner of this square. Rectangle. Sorry, geometry nerds. And Blaze is doing Blaze things. So once you're here, height cap. 1, 2, 3. These 3 have to be kind of fast. You don't have to height cap, but it's recommended because you have to be more confident in your standing angle in order to get away with not height capping. Because if you don't height cap, you'll get situations like in section 2 where I was doing Blaze skip. You would normally slide into the right spot if you did height cap, but if you don't, then you just pop off the rock and it just goes flying off into the sunset. It's just never good. So after 3, you want to tap up left and wait. If you don't wait, this thing throws cars at you. And you may be susceptible to getting owned by a car. Either you or your rock are at risk of being carred. Yes, this tornado is carrying a car. Thank you for asking. Now, I waited until this carved out piece of building that the rock is currently covering now was completely visible before I did this final telethrow straight up. And stop the rock so you can jump off and hit the goal ring. See that again. So you did the hold X thing from the section before. Sometimes you won't get enough rotation, so you can swap around the up and the up left. Silver is just as much of an art as it is a science. So do what I say, but not necessarily as I do. But because the situation may call for something a little different, like this. I didn't get to rotate as much as I did, so I did basically a fourth one straight up. And now I want to curve to the left. I want to stop and dismount. And congratulations. This is Crisis City. If you need any help telethrowing, there is a video in the playlist that explains how to do the trick and also explains the very basic version of section 1 that I covered at the very beginning of this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode for the first boss, Iblis 1.